This is a pretty lofty title. I'd like to tell you modestly that I really don't. I can't possibly know everything about libraries history. Possibly a little bit more about today, and tomorrow is still a big question mark. And most librarians would probably agree with me. In fact, I'm working at the UCSD at the Geisel Library on small projects, and so I've been in intense meetings with the librarian there and a body, a committee that is designing some new and exciting spaces for grads and faculty and postgrads. On the first, and actually they call it the first and second, but it's really the basement, and this is the addition. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but Gunnar Bergertz, who was the architect along with Gordon Carrier for that expansion that was done to the Pareto building, passed away. 95 years old, August 15th. But anyway, just a short, anyway, how the world is all connected. So anyway, back to the GLRI, the project is called the Geisel Library Revitalization Initiative, and it's another lofty project. But anyway, the point is that libraries still are looking very much in a crystal ball because of all this influx of technology that is bombarding the world. And I think it's all good. It's just that when you're building and you're spending money, real money, big money, in buildings, edifices that will contain apparatus, information, knowledge that a whole lot of people need to use. You get a little antsy about what exactly you need to do to service and appeal and excite people around you and the student body. So anyway, so I'm going to start off with some little history about me that you may already know. Professionally, I'm San Diego native. I started working in 1977 with Jim McGraw. Mrs. McGraw and Ann McGraw's son are here today. And that, it was an infatuation. I went to Cal Poly, came back to San Diego, and started working in what I think is one of the most exciting things in life, in architecture, design, art, my thing. So, but anyway, so I went on and worked, and lo and behold, 20 years later, here we are doing projects with Jim's legacy at PBA, Ferguson Bay Baldwin Architects, where we produced 3 libraries, the Fallbrook Library, the Ramona Library, and the last one was in fact, actually 4 libraries, and the last one, the Alpine Library. And we're currently working on Mission Hills Hillcrest Branch Library, so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. But anyway, so as far as yesterday, I wanted to just show you a couple of things and say a few things. Jose Aponte, some of you may have known him. He was a director at the County Library, and the guy who shepherded the Fallbrook, Ramona, and the Alpine Library before he retired, and said some very interesting things. And he was all about libraries. If you have the pleasure of meeting him, you would know what an exciting guy he was, and passionate and vibrant and inspiring. And that's a word that you'll probably hear a lot more this morning, inspiration, because we all need it. And it could come from the simplest thing to the most complex and intricate concept. But inspiration is something that most people need. When we say architecture is the mother of all arts, I believe that everyone is creative, everyone is capable of creativity, and with enough inspiration, we do. And some of you, I know, have secret lives. You paint, you draw, you sculpt, you write, you come up with whatever in your garage, you know. So I always like to inspire the engineers, because, you know, it's not just about architects, it's about a team that builds things. So you may have some great ideas, but then you need other folks to jump in and give you your ideas. So structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, they're all part of the team. So we need all of these people to put in their best to contribute to this, to what some of these things that you will see. So when you see a building, such as I'm going to show you now, that you'll see that these are huge buildings. The Alexandria Library in Egypt, in Alexandria, Egypt. You know, and some of these other projects, you'll see that it's just not one man. In fact, I was reading an interesting book this morning on Liv Khan. It's a very short tome on him. He did the Exeter Library. So you know, when you see these edifices, and we're talking about mass, you know, and you know that he was the architect, in quote marks, you know, the capital A, the architect, you know, and so many others, Le Corbusier and Mies van der Rohe, all these people. But behind them, there's usually some very strong components that some may come to light and some may not, but we know they're there, and they know they're there. Okay. So anyway, speaking about inspiration, this is something that Jose Aponte said, and I think reverberated with me anyway, because it was something that was always lying dormant below the surface. You know, in order to do a great library, you have to think far beyond the library. So I went way beyond. I went way back. Yeah. So this rendering, this picture at Lascaux and this one in Spain, in Altamira, are a beginning of man trying to convey ideas to others and actually putting them in a fairly conspicuous place, even though they were tough to find. But to them, they were easy to find. They knew where they were. And in a way, make permanence out of this knowledge. You know, imagine that this time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people did not have a written language at this time. But they certainly knew how to convey ideas. And the hunt is going to be good next year, you know. And then we jump to other things such as Gutenberg. Here's an individual, again, probably a team of folks, who came up with a way to disseminate language and disseminate knowledge that revolutionized the world. Keep in mind, you know, a bunch of monks, you know, toiling away at these beautiful, illuminated pages in these parchment sheets. It took 25 years to finish one. And their acolytes would continue this and add to that, and maybe add a few flowers to the capital L in the thing. And there's this obviously a German. Here's our future Mercedes-Benz or or BMW guy who thought, hey, we can do this a lot better than this, and faster, and we can disseminate. So anyway, that to me also has a lot to do with libraries today, and how quickly we go from one thing to another. Keep in mind that back in the monks that I was telling you about, nobody knew how to read to begin with, and nobody had even access to these places. In fact, even in the 18th century, the very famed Bibliothèque Saint-Geneviève in Paris, designed by Proust, you did not go through the stacks and pick out a book. You went to the desk that was probably longer than this here, and there was a series of librarians behind it, and you asked for the book on a written sheet, and they would find it for you and bring it to you. if you didn't walk there. Great story is that that library has been renovated recently, and it's fantastic. It's right now people can go through the library. I'm sure that it's just like in rare books or something. Some of these books are probably under lock and key, but they're there to see if people can. So that's a huge advancement. Here's a picture of an early press. So here's Scott, who comes up with this great idea. And I'm sure you've heard the story many times, but comes up with this great idea. Hey, let's make these things free. And not only that, I'm going to endow these buildings, the Carnegie Foundation. And this is something that was totally American, even though he was a Scot, but he made his money, he is American, and gives back to the community. And this is something that revolutionized libraries. I think everybody else started thinking, hey, we should do the same. Case in point is the giant goose pagoda in Xi'an, in China. That was one of the first libraries ever, and it's about 7 stories, but it stands, I'm sure, well over 150 feet tall, and you wonder how they would keep documents in there. Because, every floor gets smaller, and there's this window, and there's a staircase that goes up to each floor. And monks still didn't have that space. The manuscripts are all gone, and they put in rolls and paper, Chinese hand paper. And but anyway, this is a contrast to today, to the libraries today. So here's, in fact, I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was our Central Library in San Diego. Carnegie funded building, Beaux-Arts style. Quite wonderful, actually, if we could have one today. Something that approximates this is the Coronado Library. And I'm sure some of you have seen it. And it's not that large, but the front of it is a historic building that very much looks like this. So this is where we are today, and I think that for a good thing, librarians figured out that we need to get more excitement into this. I'm sure libraries are free and all that, but not everybody's coming to libraries, and yet if we feel, and the general populace feels, we need a place to interact. We need a place to speak. We need a place to see our friends. We need a place to learn. We do all these things that you can't do in a library. My first encounter with a library in the United States was Redondo Beach Library. And I believe it no longer exists, but it was right close to the wharf. And but it was one of these Carnegie buildings. And walk in, and you could hear a mouse in this place. And you walk in, and it's like you're walking too loudly. Clop, 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 clop. When you walk in, and the first thing you hear is, shh. Well, you've come a long way, baby. Now it's not like that at all. In fact, they probably encourage you to speak and interact in a civilized way, what they do. And which is great. And you walk into the Central Library that's just catty corner from you guys here, and you can tell them. You see that, there's some places where it's pretty quiet, and then there's some places where people can speak, exchange ideas, and which is what it's all about. So here's some of the local inspiration. When I came back from school in San Diego, this was the hottest thing in San Diego. Geyser Library. Pereira design project, and that was added to in the coming years. It was a fantastic building and totally inspirational thing. There's, spiritualistic architecture. Yeah, it's concrete glass. But look at it, and if you've been in it, you can see what the concept was. You walk around it; it's all perimeter seating on the exterior and the tower. And you've got views from the ocean all the way 360 degrees, San Diego, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. of the annuals. And of course, we've got our local inspiration. Long been coming and troubled in many, many ways, but here we are, we have it. It's here. And it's a great addition to the city. Here's some of the other stuff that was happening when I was looking at it. It was in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. Young architect Louis Guéraud wins the competition, and it's 4 bookends, 4 open books forming a square, and just a fantastic project, and just revitalized and redid for Paris what the library should be. Some quick, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. This is the Alexandria Library in Egypt. So this is the famed library that was burnt down, and some people, just read recently about it, that Ptolemy, who, was originally from Macedonia. His father, I believe, was Alexander the Great, started this library. Not this one, but and started amassing. So people like Aristotle are coming and donating things to. And it was probably not a fun trip to come from Greece to Egypt in those days. He certainly was. Southwest was in North Carolina, so anyways, it was tough getting there. But contributing, the library burned down, and there are many reasons why. Reasons or ideas that they said that why the library burned down. Was it burned by Julius Caesar? Probably not. But anyway, the thing burned, but lo and behold, they put together a competition. Storveta wins this was in the 80s, I believe, and designs this fantastic building, and you see some photos of it, that just is, again, an inspiring piece of work. Here, the old world's languages written on this, incised on this wall. So, so anyhow, we started out incising stuff, we go digital, and then we go back and incise stuff again. This kind of thing, here's a shot of the interior. Now, Alexandria, I haven't been there, but I imagine it's probably 135 out in the summer in this place, and it's got to have a pretty lofty space to keep it cool. This fantastic project. There's another one that comes to mind when we talk about inspiration. This is the Phoenix Library by Bruder. Another fantastic piece of work that is so inspiring. When you're thinking about Phoenix, it's pretty flat, But this was a catalyst. And this is another idea about libraries. The libraries a lot of times are a catalyst for a lot of things to happen in an urban environment. And this is a catalyst. That was for a great museum that they had in Phoenix. And again, an attraction to people, a cool place. Remember when we interviewed for the main library in San Diego, Bruder was confronted with the question, it just looks so cold inside of this library in Phoenix. And he just quipped back and said, well, when it's 135 outside, it's good for it to be cold inside. And so I think that was a great response, I thought. But anyway, here, this is the reading room, which is basically a very classical reading room with wonderful columns and skylights. Here's another one that I like to show, the Delft Library in Holland. Because can you imagine, many of you probably think in Conjuring, windmills and tulips and, things like that. And here's his library. And I fail to remember who the architect was on this one, but just totally upended what, their traditional thought of a library was. And just does something that is totally rad. Creates a hill in very flat Holland for kids to just have a great time. And the Salt Lake Library, I'm going to run through this really quickly. Here's another evidence that is just incredible in terms of its urbanity, how it brings people in and makes it exciting. I mean, You know, this might even look like a mall, high-end mall, you know, when you're looking at it. It's a fantastic space. Seattle is another one that's been very much touted and fantastic place, actually. There's a Renko House building in Seattle. The kids are just go crazy with this thing. Oh, and then so where does it take me, you know? And so anyway, this is Malcolm X system sketches. I'm going to run through this really quickly. There's a ton of sketches. Part of the work that I do is mostly based on research, if you will. I like to really study things in terms of the architecture and show these ideas, share these ideas with people in these sketchbooks. And I'll pass them around so you guys can see them. That one is so you can check that out, check these out. And it's really important, I think, when you're designing something that people know where you are when you're doing this. And you're not in this cave. You're not in some monastery writing this manuscript. No, you're out there, and you've got to tell people what you're doing. Kind of like we are here, and so that they know, and they can be informed. They can come back to you and suggest stuff and help. I mean, at the end of the day, the library is not for the architect. The library is for people that are going to be using it. So, not the librarian that's shooing you, in terms of that. And by the way, I like to say this, but hopefully it doesn't go off these walls, but librarians are more than likely, by and large, rat rats. Yeah. Cat rats. They love their books. And Bill Sandwell, who is a former librarian, he says, I can't stand this. He says, I've asked them to clean out this collection. You know, how many copies of Huck Finn do we need? You know, that sort of thing. But librarians, to say it, but to me too, books are like sacred. And I don't know why. You know, it's sad that in many households in San Diego, even today, there is not a book to be found. And maybe that's why I like books, because when I was a kid, all I had was textbooks. And so, there were very few books in my house, and my grandmother had books, but we didn't have that. So anyway, I'm going to go through these really quickly. These ideas that we were sharing for the Malcolm X Library. That these are quick sketches that you do to. Then there's some more finished drawings that get to do presentations to the Library Foundation, the Friends of the Library, the city engineering department, and all of this stuff, and models that you put together. Again, inspirational. I mean, when are we ever going to see the library in this light? Right? But in some of us' mind, it is like this. And you'll see this recurring. This is a thing that recurs through and through, because you want to show everything in the best light possible, right? So when you choose a dress or an outfit for the morning, you want to be seen in the best way possible. So this is a way to do it. And here's a picture of it. Here is a photograph with a Gene Cornwell mural, mosaic mural, and entrance and the palm trees. There's a fountain in the middle. Sharon Griswold, who was a librarian at the time, said, "Hey, Manuel, do you think we have any way that we can have a little fountain in the building?" And I said, "Sure." And the budget is pretty tight for a fountain. But I'll see what we can do. So we talked with the contractor, and a few drawings later, and we have a fountain. So, and it has a quote by, that circles it by Malcolm X, and it's very inspirational. And I can't quote it right now, but it has to do with reading and books, and which is fantastic. So But anyway, but it's there to see, and so when you walk in through this library, you're looking at this fountain before you get to the circulation desk. Oh, and then the thought was that this hole in the library was going to diffuse light inside the library as much as possible. Because when you get to do a building that's a certain amount, in this case it was 20,000 square feet, which is big for a branch library. Usually, I mean, and I've seen them increase, by the way, from 12,000 to a current 15,000 square feet. But this one's 25,000, so it's about 20,000 for the library and 5,000 for the performing arts center, that they call it. So, but anyway, so that when you're doing a big plan like that, you know, you need to find ways to bring light in. And it's amazing that this was done, by the way, 22 years ago, built in 1995. That this was before LEED. So, but you know, a lot of us had already studied about passive architecture, and we knew about lighting, natural lighting, and all this stuff back then. So it wasn't like, you know, just like the Alexandra Library or some of these other places. People knew how to do things right. But anyway, so you need to have some space to bring the light in. So here we chose mostly to take to keep out the south-facing light and bring in the north-facing light. Except that there are some places like this where there's a hole in the roof itself that brings light in and diffuses it. So it bounces off of the floor here and diffuses it in the building. And it's very attractive, and it's very important. It's a visual thing. It's like the Moorish, if you will, or the Andalusian patio that we have. So,
quick question. It looks like there's an enclosure with a door there.
Yeah, so there's two doors diametrically opposed in here to get in case you wanted to sit out. The librarian has never put in any chairs or anything out there. And I think they were mostly worried about kids throwing books in the fountain or something. Yeah. But and I think unfortunately they keep it locked. But it was meant to be a flowing space. There are self-closing doors so that the air conditioning would stay within it. But unfortunately, here's a shot of the kids area. And a blue corner in the New York. The floating things are acoustic, the acoustic ceilings, so that they absorb some noise, and also bring the scale down in some places. You know, it's amazing how sometimes you walk into some of these new libraries and they produce more awe than anything, which is fine, except that sometimes you don't need the awe. You know, you just need a little, place to sit and feel cozy. Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain what you meant by north and south facing? How do you keep it out?
So basically, south-facing light is actually good, but what you need to do is you need to dampen it. You need to shade it so that it doesn't heat the space inside too much. So west is probably the worst. And mechanical engineers will tell you that's totally the worst. But I'll show you a building where we had no alternative. That was the Encinitas Library. There was no alternative, and there was a reason for it. But anyway, that's how you do it. So you take the light from the south and you trellis it, you put overhangs on that, so to keep the harsh light from coming in. On the north is a different deal, because there the sun, a lot of times in San Diego it shines everywhere, but a lot of times you don't get the sun directly into a north-facing window, so you can open it up there. And in Malcolm X here, you can barely see it over here, but the windows in the back are 12 feet tall, so they're on the north side. So there we want to bring the light in as much as possible. You can see in the back. Interesting part about this library is that the library, by the way, is always, the San Diego Library has always resisted having different levels in the library because of service and lines of sight. That's very important, lines of sight. So, but in here, the site was such that it would have created a very tall retaining wall on the back, and therefore no light coming in from the north side. So I convinced them to put a 4-foot stagger in the floors, so that, and then you can see this circular thing here is a ramp. That's an ADA accessible ramp. That was, we devised that because you can imagine the ramp for 4 foot would have to have been, I think 96 feet, almost 100 feet long, to service that for someone in a wheelchair to be able to get to there. So we devised a very simple, we took the 100 feet and I bent it into a circle, into an S, and all of a sudden it's just like a switchback and going up a mountain, you know. And in the middle we put the computer center in the middle. So it's one of those things that if you talk about it more, you've got people surrounding you that are just as inspired or more, and you can get some great stuff happening. Here's the PB library, and which secret is that if you look at the date here, it says 1989. So actually this project was started before the Mountain West Library. But the way the funding happened was that this project was designed and sat on the shelf for 10 years, so it wasn't built until 1996. But anyways, just some of the sketches. This was a fantastic project, largely due and by the donors, Vern Taylor and his wife, Mary. He named it after his parents, the Earl and Bertie Taylor Library. And Mr. Taylor was adamant about, because what he did is that he bought the Farnham School. It was an elementary school site. It was a whole block, bounded by Cass and Dawes and Thomas and Reed. It was a fantastic block, flat. And but he was adamant about this whole block being library only, no one else allowed. So he wanted the city to make sure that. And so one of the things that he did is that at first I had the library right on Cass Street, and he said, no, Manuel, I want the library to be smack in the center of the lot, because he didn't want anybody else touching that line. And he was right. So anyway, here's some ideas about bringing the light in to the library, into the center, creating a drum and bringing the light into the library. It was a little tough getting the engineers of the city to accept having this roof pitch inward like a funnel, but we prevailed. Here's just a number of studies and drawings that showed, to light this drum. And here's an early version showing the library close to the corner. I'm more about urban situations as opposed to rural, and so I like to create this vibrancy or this excitement closer to more urban stuff. But Mr. Taylor was right in this case, and not only that, if you look at it in a scale, you can say, well, you can design Versailles in a 200,000 hectare plot and put it wherever you want. But you can't do that in San Diego, right? So that's one block. So here's some of the drawings and watercolors. And the reality. And I think it has some issues, by the way. After so many years, there's a transient issue. We created a little bit of a hill, because the lot was perfectly flat. Perfectly flat. I mean, they had like a 1% drop from Dawes, from Thomas to Reed. And so we had to actually bring in dirt so that the library would all drain out to the streets. And then we brought in more dirt in the back to create a park that had undulations in it. So Mr. Taylor did not want organized ball play at the park. So that created these ripples. Well, it turns out that the ripples work really well because you can stand on these top of these ripples, and it's a great lookout. So you can't win sometimes, but the idea is, I think, that, most of us don't think about the negative parts of it, which I think is what it always should be. You have to think positively through all this stuff. The indigent issue is a temporary issue, and it will be solved. And you have to think that way, or else what's the point? So here's some spaces on the interior of the library. Light and airy is how the light comes in. There's a clear story in here that brings light in, and then there's a room that shows a little light inside the library. By the way, this is right on the circulation desk. Yes?
Were you thinking of a chambered nautilus?
It's interesting. The nautilus was a part of an inspiration, as well as a flower, a blooming flower. Because it would have been a total different set of rules, because the nautilus is based on a Fibonacci series, and so that gets very complicated really quickly. And then I would have had to adhere to the golden rectangle, the golden triangle, and so it made it really more complex. So I changed it slightly, it's an artist license to flower, because they were, I didn't have to get into really tough discussions about golden rectangles, the Fibonacci series, which, I'm not a mathematician, so I don't really understand those very well. But anyway, so it created a patio on the outside with some seating, study area, seating there. So it's funny, it's almost clairvoyant, but back then, to have a computer station, you needed to have a keyboard and your monitor. Your monitor was, 24 inches deep? And so I've got pictures of people with their laptops on this right now. So you're just like at Starbucks, which is great. And who would have thought, right? Yeah. But sometimes you think about things, and you maybe unconsciously that it happens. And here's the kids' area. There's a shot of the entrance. There's a shot of it's kind of a cool. And by the way, this library we designed so that the overhang is about 10 feet on the east and northeast side of the library, and we put all the mechanical equipment in that overhang so that there's no vibration or anything inside the building, and all the noise is generated outside. It's not inside. But what it also does is that it creates incredible shade for the glass, which is 16 feet tall. And what it does is that you don't actually even need to have the lights on during the day in the buildings. They turn them on for some reason, but you don't need them because it needs a foot candle required for the book stack. So the book stacks are all radial, right? They're designed radially. And the circulation desk, because there's going to be one or two people, operating the library. So the circulation desk is at the fulcrum of this, the center of the circle. And so you're looking down all these, you can see everything in white. So it worked out really well in that planning. Sure, it's not as efficient as lining up, very much like these tables are, all stacks. Like, they're all neatly bound. These are skewed, right? They're a little wider, but it's a little more, it's a little more interesting. People can have a little discussion or dialogue, between the stacks as opposed to just, getting your vote and getting out. Cardiff was another one where this is a tiny library, by the way, for the county. It's the first project for the county, and a very tight site, 6,000 square foot library. Small parking lot on this side, 2 streets, bounding it in an alley on the back. And I'm going to run through these quickly just to show you some of the inspirational sketches, some of the ideas. And this was interesting. I'll go back to this. Frances White, a wonderful woman who was a big donor for the project, we were discussing, at a community meeting, we were discussing what the building, what it's going to do. And some lady said, well, I think we should talk about what it's going to look like. And I think it should look like, a rabbit hutch or something like this. And you can see Frances White, who stands probably no more than 5'2", and she grew to 6 feet. And she just went, no, I don't think so. I think this building needs to look forward. And that was the end of the discussion. So that was really great. So here's some of the more finished drawings that were submitted. And here's some of the shots. So we're trying to be sensitive to the people behind the building as well. So that the building slopes down, swoops down, but it also is interesting. It's not just like the back of the building. Been fighting really hard. This is a design-build situation in the Mission Hills Library to try to make it as as appealing to the people, to the kids looking at it from the school, and behind it as anybody else, anywhere else. This is not a truth. So it's always a give and take, but it's you always strive to get the best you can. The buildings are one-sided or more, right? They're not two-sided, they're not one-sided. And this, keep your eye on this picture, because I'm going to show you something that's happened later. This is the interior. By the way, this is a thermal displacement ventilation system that I'll explain a little bit further when I show the NCU library. And the great thing about thermal displacement ventilation system is that it is quiet. Can you hear the air conditioning here? Yeah. Well, you cannot hear it. Thermal displacement ventilation. So that's one thing. The other thing is that this system here recirculates all the pollutants that are in the room. Whereas thermal displacement ventilation, yes, the thermal displacement ventilation doesn't do that because it does that. It operates at a much lower velocity. And what that does also is that because it comes from the floor, what it does also is that you can run the compressors at a lower, actually a higher temperature, lower power consumed. They consume less power. And it's a great idea. And I wanted to run the ducts all under the slab, but the county was really worried about transite, which is nobody used. I think stopped using transite 20 years ago. And so we have these, and these are reminiscent of, if you've been to the old Gatwick Airport, these little R2D2 pods. I don't know if you noticed, if you ever noticed, they look like trash cans. I'll show you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I noticed the ribs in the ceiling, the ribs.
Yes.
Is there a function, or, because it kind of reminds me of Solana Beach and the Quonset hut look?
Right. Well, all of these things were in that. So what we wanted to do is create a building where the roof decking was actually also an acoustic deck. So this is it's actually perforated on that. And it certainly has that Encinitas, Solana Beach, beachy look. Because, this is a beach community. And so the building also has got this look. It looks like a carapace of some, crustacean, and because it was plugged into this beach culture thing. And in the two entrances, and then you can see that the bookends, the end panels, they're wavy, so they're not all the same. And we use natural materials so that, this, for example, is not, it's medite, and it's a recycled material that's just been varnished, and it looks pretty elegant. But the idea here was that these things were going to be about this tall. In fact, they would probably not even have either had we been underground. But since we had to bring the air from above, created this tower, which is fine. By the way, the county and the city is opting for this too. Did away with the circulation dust. There were circulation dust. Speaking of the future, are probably take some pictures of them now. Hey, do you remember this? Yes.
If they could take care of the way the circulation has moved down and see if people aren't stealing from the
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
I'm sorry, I thought the circulation desk in Park were to be sure that.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, thanks. So that's gone now. This has become a little reading book now, because we did an addition. That's why I wanted you to pay attention to the building. But what you've been commenting about it, it very much influenced by the beach area. The block in the kids area is exposed. It's a nice looking block. And here it is again. So this, we did this not too long ago, and this is in addition to it. We brought out it used to be a deep entrance, and we increased the space and brought it out and added the shade structures on the exterior. So this is, speaking of the future, this is all Wi-Fi now, and it has power. It has these posts in here so that you can actually hook up your PC or your laptop. And then the power is turned off at 6 o'clock or something when the Wi-Fi closes. So that's one way. So you've got that again. You've got the little bar here, high chairs, low chairs, and really a fun place. This is just up in pipes. Yes, sir.
The roof line reminds me of a ship or surfboard. Is that intentional?
Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah, you're right. And a lot of it is that with floating planes, interlocking planes, bringing out the character of some of these older places in beach areas, and just having fun with that and creating some interest, so that when you're going down to the castle, you weren't wowed by something. It's not. By the way, this had to compete with the marketplace right across the street, which is a big wall, seaside market. So it had to compete with that. And even though it's a small library, I think it packs a lot for the see, this is another library that has an ocean view. Happy ending. This is the big one. This was the Encinitas Library. So the Encinitas Library began as more of a civic center project. With a library, by the way. We want a library. We want a civic center. So I did a master plan for the civic center. And I don't know if you know the topography here, but from south to this is Vulcan over here. From Vulcan all the way up to Cornish, it's about 50 feet difference in elevation. So the library was going to have the top shelf. And it was great. There was a library there before, some of you may remember, and it was a circular library. And sounds good so far, but when you visited it, you walked inside, well, where's the ocean? They had these split windows. Turned out that the person who designed it, the architect was from Illinois or something, never set foot on the site. So anyway, so that was I think it took 2 swipes from the big cat to take that library away. So here's another concept. Here's some of the early concepts. Very con in flavor. And then something happened. It was like, hey, this could fly. This library could fly, and we could do some interesting things with it. And then embrace again that beach culture. The material is rough and fun and interactive and low maintenance. Have a real interior-exterior relationship as you're designing the space, making the kids area, the kids nook interesting and fun. Here's the exterior deck. Now, we were talking about Westwood Light and how bad it is. And it is bad, but here you can't get away from it. It's like you've got the building is over 150 feet long, and you've got this incredible balcony looking at the Pacific Ocean. So how can you turn your back on that? So anyway, so we put in an 8-foot overhang in the building on that west side, and we continued it with the trellis so that you could attenuate that light and have this great deck that, you know, shows pictures of it. Second. So here's a more formal drawings. So here, the top of it, you can see those scallops there. Those are that's the exterior there. The watercolor view. There's the golden entrance. By the way, it was a huge issue with height because, you know, right across Cornish was residential, and even though we were not going to be able to save the reviews because, by the way, we took the site down 8 feet, so the site itself was lowered 8 feet. There was a big bluff there, so there was no way they could see the ocean to begin with. And unfortunately, we had to maintain a maximum 68 feet on the height of the road, which was plenty, I thought, because again, we're talking about this community library, this beach community, and it's all about, you know, flip-flops and sand and surfboards. You know, it's not about high urban and stuff. So it was easy to do that. It was easy to, even though there was a huge controversy because some people wanted the library at what's it called, the Quail Garden. So I had to, by then the city decided that they were going to switch gear and take the money from the master plan of this civic center and put it into developing another site, and because it had to do with politics. And so I designed another project that gave it equal weight. The worst thing an architect can do is take sides and stuff like that. Worst thing, you know, because they could sink you sooner. So anyway, so I didn't take sides on it. I developed the 2 projects simultaneously and showed them. And thank goodness this one won. That's where my heart was, because there's no way that you could turn your back on this fabulous view. But, you know, I couldn't say one of them. But anyway, it turned out great, I think. This is the entrance, and you can see the beach feeling, you know, the limestone floor, and it looks like sand. The colors are soft, seafoam green. This, by the way, is it's like the wing of a Boeing 747, and it's actually the air return duct. And so this is an elevated floor, so it's hollow underneath, and the air comes up through a thermal displacement ventilation system. And even the furniture, you know, the surfboard design on the fabric, you know, here's the duct again. You see a lot of wood swatting. By the way, the wood was pretty inexpensive. It was Douglas fir, just clear varnish. But it conjured up all these images about laid back, easy to get there, you know, have fun. This is the ship. So you'll never see this again. You'll never see a circulation desk like this again. Jose Aponte wanted to remove it, but it's got some place, concrete. So anyway, he said, you know what, Manuel, it's fine, we'll leave it the way it is. And these, by the way, are self-check stations. So those are pretty fun. Anyway, there was the whole thing, the design was so integrated, and that's probably the fault of architects, is also to try to integrate everything, to try to make it, to do everything for everybody. But if you don't, it's a hodgepodge. So somebody's got to take the lead. Somebody has to take charge of, you know, making sure their whole thing is cohesive. You know, at the end of the day, you open the door, here's the keys, and cut the ribbon, that it's all kind of a cohesive piece. It's not it's hodgepodge of stuff. So sometimes you make decisions, and you know later you might say, I wish we didn't have his desk. Little see that? Here's a shot of that, the Boeing 747 wing. And the clear, so there's operable glass up there that works with the economical cycle. And so when the temperature is right and the humidity is right outside, so these windows pop open and they utilize some of the natural air to bring in. And it's, from what I've heard, people say it's one of the most comfortable places to be in, public places to be in, because the temperature is always good. Even though, we get fierce sun. But by the time the sun gets down, even in the summer, gets down to where it's actually going right through the windows, which is low E glass, by the way, it's tinted. By the time that happens, the sun's pretty attenuated. It's not as hot in the day as morning. But anyway, this place is packed, and some people are complaining that there's no place to park. And it's like, well, must be working. A great guy who was a deputy city manager at the time, Mr. Phillips, was the deputy city manager, and he was a champion for this project. He actually lives in North Park, and he was a great patron of the arts and architecture. And he would just kind of smile and say, well, that's the price of success. Parking lot is full. Sorry about that. What you walk? So, but this is amazing, and this was you can still go there today, and just like. And by the way, this is not just Cincinnati's library. Every library in San Diego is packed. I don't know, I know why, but a lot of people don't understand why. It's like, this is a great place for people. It's free. It's free. It's cool inside. You have all kinds of things to look at. Sometimes you can even get a cappuccino. You can get a cappuccino outside and bring it in. You can see your friends. You can meet your friends. You can go listen to music. You can see a video production. You can do all these things in the library. So that's why they're so popular. And some people don't understand, well, I got electronic books. And again, the price of an electronic book, $25. Yeah, this was fun. We designed the seating, and in here, and the ramp to go down. This is a wishbone column that is married to a blue lamp beam, whose place, actually in structural parlance, it actually is a mold-resistant frame, which is unusual for dichotomous materials, for different materials, like wood and steel, to actually be a composite and actually make a rigid frame. So, but this was designed to do that, because it's about a 50-foot span from here to here, from here to column, and the blue lamps are 4 feet deep. The thing they do also is that they break up sound, because they're like baffles when you're looking down. And then those white things there are clouds again, and so we have the lights turned upside down, and they shine against the bounding light. The little slit delivers about 10% of the light, and that's to give people a comfort level that the lights are on. But most of the lights is bouncing off the ceiling and refracted out. This is the end of the, so this here is the computer room. And this is something, by the way, that you're going to see in every library now. Computer room for people like my mom to go and learn how to use a computer. Here's the kids area. So here, the kids area is a curved glass wall that encloses it. So, kids can be a little loud sometimes. But we didn't want it to have a door. And just like we did, we took out the door in Michigan Hills Library. The original design was a door. But the thing again? No. This is for kids. study room, by the way, this is incredible. And so there's a lot of study rooms. Now, keep in mind, this was opened in 2008. Fast forward to 2017, and unfortunately, some librarians still have some problems with the seminar rooms. They don't know how to deal with it. Richard Phillips in Encinitas, and because this is an interesting thing. This library is owned by the city of Encinitas. It's operated by the county. So we built the library, and then the county leased it. So they didn't have a lot to do with the design of the library. But they learned a lot of it through Jose Ponte. They learned a lot from this. And you'll see some of those concepts in the Fall Road, Ramona, Alpine Library. And by the way, the finishes were pretty rough and rustic. This is a poured-in-place concrete, and we used a color that almost approximated this color of the soil that was there in the library. And so we also spaced the foam boards so that actually the concrete would weep and give you a nice texture, and believe me, it hides all kinds of imperfections. This is I don't know the photographer's name. Oh yeah, Lorenzo Mendez took this picture, and this is in a magazine. I thought this fabulous because this embodies the whole idea. Oh my God, I did it wrong. So anyway, more recent projects. This is again going to go through this really quickly. This is Fallbrook, and showing you the process. Because a lot of this architecture happens through the process. It's not something you just sit there and all of a sudden this inspiration flies. And the three muses show up at your doorstep, and all of a sudden you got something. It's through hard work. And in this one, for example, I'm the author of all these sketches and all this, but we have a great team. Ferguson involved in architects working with us on this. CW Driver. This is a design build project, which means that the builder is actually the head of the triumvirate there. Okay, so they are the leader, the project leader. So I'm teamed up with Ferguson involvement. Again, it's a long history, 30 years history, more, 40 years history with that, and so it was a natural, and so this is a competition, and very quickly, how the building has changed and looked is through the discussions, this is Fallbrook, right? Fallbrook, and then all of a sudden it's like, we got it now. So, it's all about getting light in the building, creating ambiance for the children, and all of a sudden it starts to morph into something that is a little bit of everything, if you will. It's still a modern building on the inside because it has to be. And a bankable library. This is a five foot tall sign right on Mission Library. Kids Tower, entrance, saddle roof. Kids areas, teens. This is a kids' environment. There's huge fruits. This is celebrating fall. Well, they have fruit. So we made them oversized because the theme here was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So this is the kids' environment, and a great artist built these from some sketches that I put together. Local artist. There was about 10 artists involved in this project. It was pretty cool. Ramona was very similar. We got that started. You can see that in 08. It was a little different though. It was all about building a library and continuing the urban wall in Ramona. Some of you might laugh, but yeah, there is an urban setting in Ramona, and creating creating a facade, basically, on the street of the lawn. And we prevailed because of that. Most everybody, all the other contestants wanted to pull the building back from the highway. And it is red, by the way. So it's pretty cool. It's in this canyon red. And that's what I wanted the Mountain Next Library to be to begin with. But through some intervention, Councilman Stevens decided it was good. I had rendered the drawing in different colors. It could have been possibilities. So part of it was red, part of it was yellow, part of it was purple. He said, yeah, I like it just the way it is. Like, that's not what we're supposed to do here. It's either one or one of these. I don't know, I like it this way. Anyway, you can see there's a bit of a classical look to this library. And it had to do a lot with people there, the community. So it's a really nice feeling hall. It's tall, and basically it divides the library part from the community room part. Alpine libraries are the neatest. This right here on the left-hand side, this was celebrating the fact that Alpine was the #1 honey producing town in the United States. And so I thought that the honeycombing was an important thing. It didn't get much traction, but you can see that it's portrayed in the design. And here it is. So it was become more of a Kumeyaay semblance, I should say, of Kumeyaay basket. Because Kumeyaay is prevalent in this area, as most of San Diego, East San Diego. Stunning work. And this is the park behind it. Smaller openings. And by the way, these are incredible in terms of modulating the sun with the west sun. You break that up. Inside the building, like Mary, inviting, nonchalant. Mary, this is Christopher Puzo did this sculpture. This was again a Ewok. It was reminiscent of the Kumeyaay because it was very stylized, very much Chris Puzo. Reading area, reading books. And this is the Borrego Springs Library. I just want to go through this really quickly. And I'm sorry I was messing up with your question and answer. But here's the inspiration part, right? Seeing the light that is not there. Seeing it in the light that is not there. This is Mission Hills. Some of the ideas of Mission Hills, just to give you guys a little bit of, because this is new so some of the ideas for the Washington Street, and taking this building and making it truly a craftsman building. Now, I'm not much of a historicist in terms of architecture, but you have to understand history in order to do something different. Like Picasso. Picasso was a painter, a classical painter before he did all the things that you might want to call crazy. But he was a bona fide painter. To know architecture, you have to know the roots. Like Lisa, originalidad is volver al origen. Originality is coming back to the origins. Interesting concept. So these are some of the sketches that we put together to get the project, and this is one of the final. This is what you're going to see from Front Street. This is a great quote from a fantastic librarian. I'd like you to read it and just savor that. Anyway, thank you very much.